So this is Baruch, and like I say, this book is a little bit difficult to handle. So let me bring this up so we can get as much of the page as possible, because it's really a big book. Now he was talking about, so here we see that these things are particular and not general categories. So he said there's a way of learning things out. He's been being breathing proof for this, which is that when the Torah states something specific, and then includes it in a generality, and then comes back and specifies again. So we say what this specifically was talking about is only what's specified in the end, those particular parts. So we're talking about what is excluded, what is included, and where is astrology, because this part of his book, and we're really getting closer to the end of it, is really here in order to try to show us how the astrology, which we call Jewish astrology, is of course kosher in every way. They described in Sanhedrin who is the reader of omens. It says, bread fell from his mouth, his staff fell from his hand, the deer stopped in the path, a snake is on his right, and the fox is on his left. Using these signs to divine. Now I have to say for myself that, when I was a graduate student, I got involved with a lady who told fortunes. She wasn't a gypsy. She was a lady she lived down the street. But an unusual person. And basically this is what she was able to do with cards. She was able to make up, there was a sequence of which cards have this kind of power and this cards have this kind of power in relationships. And she did that. And I watched that. It's very interesting. But here we're going to say that this is something which is forbidden. And further they say, don't make an omen. And our rabbis say, don't read omens. For example, those that read omens using the huldot and birds, say for example. Huldot is some kind of an animal. I'm not sure which. So just like I said, like with the cards. They have certain, let's say like the 7 means something. Just like that. The 13 possibilities, 13 is a serious number. So they say, then they say like this, speak about what will happen in the world according to what we see in signs from the planets and animals and birds. Indian astrology seems to use these things. They are big on omens. An Indian astrologer could be reading one's horoscope and ask you a question on pregnancy. And while doing it, he sees 2 birds that come along, and then one bird flies away, and then he might say that this is an omen. You are going to have twins, and one of them is going to die, or something like that. And this is called using omens. And again, this is not based on the laws of astrology, but is something different and additional and based on the law of omens. So the rabbis didn't like people using that, and it is forbidden. This art is found in the world. I guess it's not the rabbis. I think it's mostly, you would say, the Torah itself. But he's specifying, so I guess the rabbis over here, it's, I guess, from Sanhedrin. That's what he means. Found in the world today, mainly among sailors and farmers. They are God-fearing people necessarily anyway, because their occupation is very much dependent on the environment. Because the sea must have been sometimes very dangerous back 2,000 years ago, and the farmers need rain. Without rain, the best farmers in the world can't grow crops. Now, let me see if I got this thing, which way to get it straight. So that's where I was at. So farmers, and the sea must have been sometimes very difficult. Without rain, the best farmers in the world can't grow crops. So they always look for signs from the heavens. They're nervous. Baseball players are like this too. Like those who say if the moon on the first or the second day of the month has a black ring around or surrounding it, it's a sign of much rain during that month. And similar to a black ring surrounding the moon, if the sun shines bright and the air that surrounds it is red, there will be very heavy winds from the direction where the red air appears. Similar to this, one saying things like this concerning any of the 7 planets are the bright comets, and also one saying the voice of the raven at night and the voice of chickens at the beginning of the night testified to rain, and the hulda who lifts up its voice and dances testifies to cold weather, and other signs like these are the ways of the readers of omens from birds and the planets. That's very interesting. If you ever were, I lived on a farm for a little while. I was more like a graduate student, but I was living on we had a farm. Anyway, and you do see there's something called the Farmer's Almanac. And the Farmer's Almanac, it charts the planets, or to a certain extent, and serves different kinds of omens to try to help farmers because, listen, you only can make hay when the sun shines. And so that's the rule of the farmer. So you need to know where the bad weather is, when it's coming. Now, Rabbi Avraham goes on to sorcerers as listed in Tractate Sanhedrin, so he goes over and he says like this. Sorcerers are ones who do a deed and didn't just hold on to the eyes. Now, what does that mean? And what the sorcerer do, we already mentioned above. They know when different powers are found in the world. And also the Khartoumim, who gather herbs and trees at specific times. They are also deeds and not just holding the eyes. Now, that's a quote. I'm not sure that I understood what holding the eyes means. Now he goes on to explain the Baal Ov as listed in Tractate Sanhedrin. What is a Baal Ov? Baal Ov is someone who speaks from his joints or under his armpits. Baal Yadunim, the Yaduni, is someone who puts a special bone in his mouth and speaks from it. The rabbi said, one who asks the dead, this is someone who starves himself and goes to the graveyard so that an unclean spirit rests upon him. On the different forms of divination, our rabbis explained to us. Let me see if I can move this up a little bit. It gets tricky over here. I move everything around. Very interesting, but you run out of space in this big book. And what the sorcerer do, as we already mentioned above, they know when different powers are found in the world, and also Khartoumim, who gather herbs and trees at specific times. These are also deeds and not just looking the eyes, so holding the eyes. Now he goes on to explain the Baal Ov is listed in the Tractate Sanhedrin. He says a Baal Ov is someone who speaks from his joints or under his armpits. A Baal Yaduni is someone who puts a special bone in his mouth and speaks from it. The rabbi said, one who asks the dead. Let me move this over a little bit more again. This is someone who starves himself and goes to a graveyard so the unclean spirit rests on him. On all the different forms of divinations, our rabbis explain to us what they are about and how their work is performed. They said all of them are forbidden to do. Like they said, don't learn to do. Don't try to figure out what it is. But you can study them in order to learn and teach, which is what we see here. He says, in general, it was forbidden to ask of them because it is written, it is an abomination. All who do these be simple with the Lord your God. In other words, talk to God. So again, this is his proof that divination is a general law, and all these others are specifics to this, but only one may learn them in order to learn and teach them, because judges and others have to know what all these forbidden things are in order to know what these practices involve if Jews get involved with them. Now, I'm looking at this, and let's try to read a little bit more, because it's got kind of delicious ideas where he's coming and he's really explaining all these different kinds of idolatries. So I apologize once again because I read from the book, and I don't read from the page that I'm showing you, so sometimes I get the book too high, too low, and I miss some of the words, but especially a book like this is so big. But there they say, they saw that you don't ask them, like it says, from where do we learn that we don't ask the Chaldeans? From be simple with the Lord your God. And this comes out from this section of the Torah and the Talmud above, where the rabbis expound all the different kinds of work that are forbidden to engage in and to do. For here they also warned us from seeking them out and asking them. It is not only that you don't do it, but it is also forbidden to try to find the Chaldeans and ask them. And the word Chaldean here means all those who engage in forbidden works. That is the 4 types of forbidden astrology and all the diviners. And they are called Chaldeans because it was the people of Babylonia, the land of Shinar, who engaged in all these arts. It is known that all the people of these lands are Aramaic. They all speak Aramaic. That's the Aramaic world. Like it says in the Chasdim, spoke to the king of Aramat because they spoke of the language of the nation they were from, And the children of Aram, oats, chol, neter, and mash, are not mentioned here, nor the Kasdim and not the Chaldeans. And the people who lived in the land of Shinar were called Chaldeans, and they were called Kasdim and Saranimi, and other names. I don't know where you're getting this from, but this is quoting Rabbi Chia Abba Barchia. And the name includes all of these false prophets and Chaldeans. So he says, and the Kasdim, they were from the governmental families in the days of Nebuchadnezzar, the evil one. And they had their opportunity to serve their idols, and they were priests in their houses of worship, and from this were called Kasdim, those who draw down the forces of the planets. The Kasdim were a specific class of Chaldeans. They were like the high priests of the Chaldeans, so they can be called Kasdim or Chaldeans. But the Chaldeans were generally the regular people, and therefore didn't be called Kasdim according to their class in society. So Rabbi Avraham learns this, that Chaldeans means all these groups of people who practice the forbidden astrology or divination. But regular astrologers are not called Chaldeans. Since our rabbi said we don't ask the Chaldeans, they include among them the Kasdim, who drew down forces from above, and all those who engaged in wisdoms like these concerning knowing the future. The words are to us, like we said, we don't ask sorcerers. Chaldeans, readers of the times, and all the other wisdoms that are similar to them, because the Chaldeans engaged in all those arts. Now we have come to distinguish clearly what it means when we don't ask the Chaldeans. And it has been revealed to us what are the wisdoms that are suitable to learn and practice, and what are those that are permitted to learn but not to practice. It appears from this, the one who practices what is permitted, and his intention is for the sake of heaven, he can be called a truly righteous one, even though the whole world calls him misguided. But if he forbids what is permitted and permits what is forbidden, we don't call this person misguided. We call it, it's enough for us now. So we call him what? So the laws, guilty and a sinner. There we go. Because he has left the true path. So this is Baruch. We're going to stop right here. We went a little bit longer. I just love what he's bringing me here, all kinds of information. And this is Tikkun Elevator Kolo.